All right, since everyone's quieted down, thank you so much. So good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Some are virtual, many of you in the room, and those live on Instagram. Who knew that I could be on Instagram one day? I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the Honourable Yara Sachs, the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions and Associate Minister of Health from Government of Canada, her team, our incredible team of committed colleagues at Kids Help Phone, our board members and community partners who are so key in us delivering youth mental health services for young people here in Canada. My name is Jenny Yuen. I'm the Group Head and Executive Vice President of People, Culture and Partnerships here at Kids Help Phone. As we begin our conversation today, I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking with you from the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. All of us meeting here today are residing on lands that have been the home to Indigenous peoples since time immemorial, and we thank them for their continued stewardship of these lands, waters, and wildlife. We will continue to renew our commitment to reconciliation every day through the implementation of Finding Hope, Kids Help Phone's action plan for supporting Inuit, Métis, and First Nations young people from coast to coast to coast in partnership with Indigenous peoples. We're honored to host you all here today as we continue to focus on an incredibly important issue and topic, the young people of Canada. They are our future, and so it's incredibly important to have you all gathered here today with us. Our President and CEO, Kathy Hay, really wanted to be here, but even an innovation charity like Kids Help Phone, we haven't quite figured out cloning and teleporting just yet. She's currently in Australia with the E-Mental Health International Collaborative, EMIC, to learn more about other global countries' models and also to share our model. In fact, we hosted delegations here from Ukraine and Singapore just a few weeks ago, and they've shared that they will be modeling their services and their infrastructure and build to deliver to young people in their countries after the services here at Kids Help Phone. We are Canada's only free 24/7 multilingual e-mental health service available to all young people from coast to coast to coast. So it is incredibly heartwarming and strategic for us to be able to work with a global network to learn more about what other countries are doing, but also share and accelerate the impact that we can make globally for young people across around the world. Innovation is in the DNA of Kids Help Phone. Since 1989, we're a service that launched nationally, and we are available and accessible in every single community. And we're seeing that in our volume. We call it volume diversity here at Kids Help Phone across many services as well, is that we're actually seeing that the young people who are reaching out to us are reflecting the diversity here in Canada. And so for us, it is a validation that we are trusted, but it is also a mission for us to ensure that we continue to deliver the services that meet them where they are to really ensure that they are thriving in their world. So, it's incredibly important as we think about the fact that we can talk about numbers and we can talk about stats, but behind every one of those numbers and stats and every single connection is a young person who has reached out to us in their moment of need, in whatever crisis they are feeling, in whatever moment and all the feels that they are feeling. So it's incredibly important that we join here as a sector, as partners, and as government, together with our government leaders to ensure that we're continuing to be there for young people across Canada. So with that, as we always strive for better together, I'm very honored to introduce Minister Yara Sachs to say a few words.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Jenny, thank you so much, and to the team at Kids Help Phone. Every time we come here to visit and to talk, I'm blown away by the work that we're able to do with Kids Help Phone to really impact so many young people across this country and also around the world with the work that you're doing. And I'd like just to take a moment, as Jenny did, to acknowledge where we are. Land acknowledgements really matter. They're about presence. They're about healing. They're about knowing that the lands that we live, work, and play in are also lands that are opportunities to build bridges, create connections, and to really enable us to build a Canada that includes everyone in the truest sense of the word. Reconciliation is reconciliation, and we're doing it every day in places like Kids Help Phone are key partners in making sure that, as Indigenous communities say, 7 generations forward, what our children will be able to achieve and thrive and accomplish really happens in the work that we do today. Kids Help Phone, thank you always for hosting us. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm excited to be taking part in the discussion that we're going to be having today, because we know a lot of kids are struggling. As the Minister for Mental Health and Addictions, I get asked a lot, are the kids all right, or are they going to be all right? And I say the kids are okay. Some days are better than others, but we know that they're struggling, and conversations that we have here on a panel like today, and the conversations the kids are having with each other and their peers, and what we want also with their parents and their families and their communities. It's essential, it really matters that we keep these discussions and these conversations open and flowing and going, because again, it's about connection and it's about trust. And we know that young people today are facing unique challenges. They're grappling with the effects of war and conflict in the world, climate change, and the rising cost of living. I'm a mom to 2 teenage daughters, and I see firsthand with them the challenges that our kids are facing and confronting as they deal with really changing realities that are oftentimes their warp speed, especially in the world of interconnectedness on social media and 24-hour news cycles. Kids today are more attuned than ever to what is happening in the world around them, and having the skills to cope with those realities matter more than ever. Because as Jenny said, no matter where our kids live, we want every young Canadian to thrive and reach their fullest potential, but also have the skills to assess risk, to understand the world that they live in, and also have the tools not only to cope with it, but to rise to the moment so that they are part of the solutions of building a future together. And that starts with knowing who they are, being resilient, and having good mental health. And that's why we're investing in mental health and the mental health of our kids, because we know that the communities of today, for them to be resilient and strong in the future, then we need to invest in our kids now. And we know that our young people don't always have safe spaces where they can talk, where they can feel out loud and be, where they can share their doubts and their fears and feel accepted for the questions that they have and the issues that they're grappling with. I know that as a mom, having those conversations can be hard. Like many parents, how was your day? Fine. What did you do? Nothing. But yet they are on these phones and devices that we see, and they're having an entire different conversation in those spaces. And we want to make sure that those spaces and places are safe, and also that they know where to land at places like Kids Help Phone. And for 35 years, Kids Help Phone has been doing exactly that. You've made such an enormous difference in communities and to our kids, really to our kids, by supporting young people in their time of need. Being there in that exact moment, whether it's online or on phone or by text, is critical to knowing that kids, that we have that safety net to catch them. Which is why I'm really pleased to announce today, right now, $7.5 million to support your work in providing mental health counseling and crisis support to children and youth across Canada, including racialized minorities, 2S LGBTQI plus youth, and newcomers to Canada. And it's not just about the dollars, it's about all of you here who are part of this amazing organization and building out this network of support. And it's about our kids, because we know Kids Help Phone plays such an important role as a network partner with the Government of Canada, but with important projects like the 988, the Suicide Crisis Helpline, where you offer tailored support with our network across this country to support young people and who do reach out in that moment of crisis. So what's the funding today about? It's going to allow Kids Help Phone to continue to provide mental health support services, including 24/7 access that is bilingual, mental health supports via voice and text, online counseling, and crisis support for youth across the country. So thank you for all that you do, and we are so excited that we are going to be supporting this work to continue to do the important work that you do. But it's not just about the work in that moment. It's about the data and collection and analysis of who's reaching out and why. I'm a big data geek, so I the work that Kids Help Phone does in really understanding where our kids are at now, but also where they're going, what they're looking for, what they're grappling with. And the data behind that is so critical in building better networks of support and systems of support across the country for our young people, especially when it comes to underserved communities and those that we know are facing structural and systemic inequities that we know are still there. So as the Canada's Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and also as a mom, I'm so proud to work with organizations like Kids Help Phone. You are making a tremendous difference in the lives of our young people across this country, and you should all, each and every one of you in this room, and those who are connected to us online and around the globe, thank you for supporting this work. It really, really matters. And we know that with you as our partners, we will help young Canadians navigate through difficult times, but also really give them the tools to thrive and succeed in the Canada of our future. So I'm excited for the conversation today, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Sachs. This funding helps young people on the ground across Canada from coast to coast to coast in such meaningful ways. So this really is an important investment in the future of young people in Canada. So thank you again for that. I'm going to move us now into a bit of a panel discussion to really demonstrate how meaningful this funding will be on the ground. I'd also like to take a minute to recognize our folks who are joining us from Instagram, on our Instagram live feed, as well as on Zoom as well. You're just as much in the room as everybody else who's in this packed house with us today, so thank you for being here. I am Mark Henick. I'm the Executive Director of Strategic Storytelling and Communications here at Kids Help Phone. And it's really my honor to be able to hear the stories of young people who are affected by funding announcements like this and the work that we do every day. We have a little Slack channel here at Kids Help Phone where we hear fully anonymized feedback and comments and experiences of young people who call us every day. And it's one of the high points of my day to hear about the way that we affect people. So I'm really thrilled to introduce our panel that we have. We've met already the Honorable Yara Sachs, Minister of Mental Health and Addictions and Associate Minister of Health. We've also met already Jenny Yuen. She's our Group Head and Executive Vice President of People, Culture, and Partnerships at Kids Help Phone. And to my immediate right, Anjana Sudharshan. You're a member of the Kids Help Phone 2024 National Youth Council, or NYC. Let's give a warm welcome to our panel. So Anjana, I'd like to start with you. What are some of the specific challenges that you think youth are facing today, and why do they need support of Kids Help Phone and other organizations now more than ever?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mark. I think Minister Sachs already mentioned in an era of technological advancements, of war, conflict, climate change, youth are experiencing all of these global challenges, but also compounded by things like trying to find a job, dealing with relationships, bullying. All of these factors compound and are sources of mental health challenges for many youth across the world, and especially in Canada. We see that about 42% of youth that reach out to Kids Help Phone are expressing suicide. Those contacts are regarding suicidal ideation. And that relates very closely to me. I had a friend reach out to me at one point expressing suicidal ideation, and I didn't know how to support them in that moment. They were facing a lot of uncertainty. And at that moment, I knew that I had Kids Help Phone as a resource that I could turn to as a youth to help them. And I was able to get them the support that they needed in that moment. So when youth are facing all these challenges and don't have the resources at that moment that they need it, the moment that they need that support immediately, they're left to deal with those feelings alone. And that can not only exacerbate, their ability to thrive, their ability to build lives in this world, to function. So it's so important that we have resources that are there for youth every step of the way. I think any youth here, you were all once youth at some point, having that resource in a classroom, having it on your phone, having it as something you can, as in my case, recommend to someone, as if you're not able to support them in that moment. Having someone that you know is going to be trained to provide that support is incredibly important because, with the case of suicide, it can change lives. It can change the trajectory of someone's life. And I think as a youth, I feel more safe. I feel more comfortable knowing that I have that resource with me. And as a member of the National Youth Council, being able to help spread that awareness and increase mental health literacy amongst other young people only makes me feel more confident that the work that's being done today is going to have an impact on the livelihoods of young people.
Yeah, and it's such important work as well. Minister Sachs, do you want to add on a comment there, since you talk to young people and their families across the country every day?
Absolutely. And, you know, you're so right. Young people are facing a myriad of challenges today that as a parent, we always hope that they won't have to experience these challenges, but the reality is that they are. And you touched on employment and affordability and inequities that we're seeing, and they're growing. We know that they're growing, and youth feel it more than they have in generations prior, and we know that, which is why when we look at what are the tools and resources that we can give young people today to navigate the spaces that they're in and also feel a sense of hope and also trust. I think those two are very, very important in how do we create, when I think of what a network of support needs to have as its foundational pieces, it's really those two, is the hope and the trust. And Kids Help Phone really does provide that. It's to know that there is someone on the other end of the line or the text or the phone line or the chat bot or whatever it is that really sees that young person in that moment, is that first connection to build trust. And from that comes the hope, but also agency. And that's the third piece of the puzzle for me, is how do we ensure that our young people know that there's a trusted source, that the support and the hope is there, and that they have the ability to, I always say, drive their bus, to be able to drive the conversation to where they need it to go, to feel that they have a path forward. And Kids Help Phone does that in so many different ways to really meet kids and young people where they're at. And I think when we do that, that's where the resiliency comes, and that's where we can create foundational support for kids and their mental health.
Minister Sachs, you mentioned that when we do that, when we do these kinds of things in the mental health community, that it helps. I'm curious, as I'm sure everybody on our call and in the room is, well, what are we doing about some of the struggles, some of the challenges that were mentioned from a policy perspective, a funding perspective? What's the government of Canada doing to help the youth in Canada?
And that is a great question. And so we're almost at the anniversary of 1 year since the launch of the 988 Suicide Crisis Prevention Line. And I can't begin to tell you how important that step has been in partnership with Kids Help Phone, but also 39 other partnered organizations around the country. And what that looks like, that 24/7, no matter who you are and where you are in this country, no matter how old you are, no matter what language you speak, because we have access to not just a bilingual access line, but really working in communities across the country to make sure that there are additional layers for newcomers to Canada, that in that moment of absolute crisis, there is someone to catch you, that there is someone on the other end of the line that will give you that support, that what we call reaching out, that you're a hand, whether it's virtually or getting them to physical support if they need it in that moment of crisis. We know there are parts of the country, such as Nunavut, where youth suicide is high, where young people are struggling to the point where, I'll share this one piece because I think it really hits home why the work that Kids Help Phone does is so important and why the 988 is so important. So in meeting with President Nathan Obed of the Inuit Nation last year, he shared with me that in Inuit communities across the north, when a young person dies from suicide, the community comes together, but it has become normalized to have to navigate through that grief. And when I think about it in terms of even in my own family, when we lost my nephew quite some time ago, it was a shock in the community. We should never get to a place where our young people in struggling with suicidal ideation is normalized. And having the 988, having, in addition to that, the National Suicide Prevention Framework that we're working on with every province and territory and with First Nations and Indigenous communities is an important step in this work, and Kids Help Phone is a tremendous partner in that work. But we know we needed to do more. We know that across the country, there are community organizations that have been filling the gaps in providing mental health services, particularly to youth, for decades, and they need that lift up. We knew we needed to invest more in youth to be able to have accessible, timely, culturally appropriate, and reachable services in their communities, which was why earlier this year in Budget 2024, we announced a once-in-a-generation investment of $500 million, so $500 million over the next 5 years for youth mental health. And it's huge. It is a tremendous lift by not just the government, but organizations across the country to say, youth matter, we see you, we hear you, and we are going to do the work and invest in you for your future, and making sure that as young people in this country, that you have the trust, the hope, and the support, and the resiliency to really be part of the Canada that you want to see and be a part of. And so we will be announcing the first call for proposals for the Youth Mental Health Fund really soon. But this is a once-in-a-generation investment in our young people, and that's the kind of work we do every single day. I'm excited about it, not just as minister, but as you know, a mom and a member of the community, to see incredible organizations like Kids Help Phone be part of. Really, it's a national project for our young people to making sure that they have the tools that they need for a good mental health.
Yeah, and speaking of those tools, Jenny, I want to bring you in here because Kids Help Phone is an incredibly innovative, data-driven e-mental health charity. So, you know, you can't fix what you don't track and measure. What is Kids Help Phone doing in terms of implementing, exploring data tools to not only get a better understanding of what the youth mental health situation is out there, but to implement evidence-based interventions?
Yeah, it's really interesting as we think about, like we've talked about, you know, all of the young people that are reaching out, not only to our services, but services across the country, is those are situations and moments that young people are sharing their moments with us. What are they experiencing? What are they feeling? So those are micro moments that we can, we're helping a young person. When you look at it from a macro level, and you think about the 21 million connections that Kids Help Phone has had to our services alone since 2020, it tells a story. It talks about the intersection of what's happening across this country. So we, just a couple of weeks ago, we launched Kids Help Phone's Innovation and Applied Research Accelerator. We call it Accelerator to the Power of KHP, where there's 3 different pillars. There's one that is very product and access point and focused in terms of how do we reach young people in the moment? How are we serving them? How do we continue to evolve? Because we all talked about here, young people are changing so fast. How they communicate is fast. They're experiencing the real world in real time. And so how do we continue to meet them in the issues that may crop up either in their specific world, in their moment, or what they're experiencing around them? So the product is critical. The data, to your point, is immense. Sitting with millions and millions of data points of text messages and conversations of how young people are talking about their mental health. When you anonymize it and de-identify it and you look at it on aggregate, it shares insights. It actually tells us what's happening in the moment, but can also inform solutions for now, but also solutions for the future. Where are young people going? What are they experiencing? And that brings in our 3rd pillar, which is actually our applied research pillar. So when we actually put this data in the hands of partners in the sector, in the community with post-secondary, what can we actually learn? How can we actually leverage this real-time data to inform solutions that are coming faster, that are actually being able to meet young people? So those elements are key. We have, Kids Help Phone has Canada's largest data set on youth mental health in real time. And so when you think about that and you think of how fast young people are changing, it's incredibly important that we harness it, but not lose sight of the fact that these are individual experiences from young people. And you know, the one other element that I'll add is we're seeing that trust side. In our volumes alone, I talked about volume diversity in the opening. You know, young people who are reaching out to us are proportionally greater in percentage than the population in Canada. So an example of that is that Indigenous young people, or Indigenous peoples, represent 5% of the Canadian population. They're 10% on our service volume. Young people from Black communities are 3.5%. They're almost 6% of our service volume. And so when you think about that, being able to enable solutions for equity-seeking young people in a more nimble and in a way that meets them where they are in their lived experience, that's critical to what the Minister and Anjana have said. It's important to thrive. It's not about just planning for something 10 years from now. We want them to thrive now and continue to feel that sense of hope and for us to be able to unlock it.
But Jenny, I want to pull on that thread of 10 years from now too, because I think forward thinking, thinking of where we want to be in the future as an organization, as a youth mental health movement, what does the future look like for Kids Help Phone?
Yeah, it's interesting because right now we are a service that requires young people to know us and come to us. And that's important. But as we've evolved, we've launched a few access points now that are actually meeting young people where they are. So we are looking at, how do we integrate with where they are in their learning management systems. We've just piloted a launch with EdSP, which is a learning management system in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So when they're in classroom, there's actually an access point to Kids Help Phone services, because we know that when you go to school, you don't get to pack your feelings and emotions away. There's lots that happens. So being able to find those moments in terms of how we reach them, where are they? They're on gaming sites, they're on social media sites, they're in community centers. So how do we bring services and actually maximize the access points in their community without them always having to come to a site like Kids Help Phone? We're still there, we'll always be there, but actually how do we meet them in their world so that we're actually integrating exactly where they are?
Anjana, do you want to comment on that, meeting young people where they are?
Yeah, I think there is still so much work that needs to be done in this area. When I talk to other young people, there's still young people that experience stigma. I know personally in my community, stigma has been a barrier to receiving mental health services. And as such, barriers like stigma, such as isolation, uncertainty, unawareness of services, those still exist. As such, as Jenny has mentioned, it's so important that organizations like Kids Help Phone are taking those steps to meet young people, because the barriers, they're still going to persist. That young people might not be able to make those steps to reach out to resources. We have to meet at a middle ground where we're taking sufficient efforts to actually meet young people. And I think that's a sentiment that a lot of young people share, and that, I'm 21 years old now, but in the past 10 years, I've seen Kids Help Phone go from just being posters in my classroom to being an advertisement that I see when I'm scrolling through Instagram, or to a community like peer-to-peer that I'm able to engage with. So the steps that we're taking to make these resources more diverse, to make them more accessible, to make them targeted to specific communities that need the support. IDEA is something that Kids Help Phone really prioritizes in all those efforts. All those steps are progress in meeting young people where they are, and effectively in the future are going to help break those barriers. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that young people are always going to have those barriers to reaching services. What are the steps that we can take to reach them where they need? And I'm proud to be a part of Kids Help Phone and proud to have experienced that personally in my life throughout those 10 years of seeing the growth of Kids Help Phone. I hope that growth continues in the future.
Well, and we're glad that you're a part of us too. Minister Sachs, did you want to say something on that?
I think I want to lean in a little about the power of what Kids Help Phone has done in being that midpoint bridge, or that place, that first point of contact on the trust building. Since the 988 launched last year, it has fielded over 250,000 calls in a year, which means that every call answered means that it's someone who is then directed to services and supports that they need. That's 250,000 calls that Kids Help Phone has been a part of, understanding who is calling, why they're calling, and getting them to the help that they need. And there are services and organizations out there doing that work. And we know that we need to build out more, but just that bridge, even in something like the Integrated Youth Service Network that the federal government's been building out now for about 15 years, with organizations like Huddle, if you are in BC, or Kickstand, if you're in Alberta, or here in Ontario with Waihu, really youth-led, youth-designed supports for mental health and primary care, social workers, and really creating a network of support that includes local organizations on the ground. And kids wouldn't know to get there if it wasn't for this meeting point at Kids Help Phone, because having those steps along the way to build the trust, create the connection, and then get them to the services they need, it's a stepped process. And the work that's done here is a key part of understanding who's looking out for help and also who's not reaching out for help. And to know that we have these networks that are integrating more and more really with the leadership of the work that you're doing that's data-driven is really going to be critical. You know, the internet and social media and all, they're very noisy spaces. And to know that our young people can cut through the noise and land safely here is critical in getting them to those integrated youth services, to getting them to the 988, to getting people to the help that they need on the ground, because they're not always going to know where to find it.
Well, and sometimes, of course, as we all know, anybody who's trying to access the system, it can be difficult to find it. And if we're encouraging people to reach out, we have to be sure that there's somebody on the other end to reach back. So, Minister Sachs, how would you suggest we support young people in Canada who might be struggling with their mental health or with suicidality, recognizing that the system can be difficult to navigate?
So this is where we need to make the system more accessible and easier to navigate, which is exactly as Anjana said, meeting kids where they are, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on gaming platforms, whether it's posters in their schools, whether it's a trusted teacher or friend, that they know that there is someone that they can go to that they trust. And really, it is about the trust. I can't emphasize that enough. For them to know that there is a person that they want to go to. You know, I've traveled around the country speaking to young people, and there's like two different conversations happening at the same time. So when you speak to young people, especially when we go, we were up in Dawson City this summer, and Indigenous youth there were telling me how they don't necessarily want to go to the local social worker or a therapist or a counselor in their community, because it might be their family member, it might be their aunt, it might be their cousin, it might be someone's grandma, or the mother of a friend, and they're looking to build that trust, but also have privacy, and also they're dealing with stigma. So to know that in this day and age that we can reach young people virtually in a virtual space that is meaningful, because a lot of times the virtual space can feel like a connected space that isn't really real. And platforms like this enable young people to have those meaningful connections to get to the care and the support that they need. And so when we think about what young people need in building that trust, it's not always the person that they know the best. It might be the person who is a degree separated from them, but really sees them in the world that they're living in. And on the other side of this is parents and families. Parents are grappling with how to best help their kids. Excuse me, and having that place where they can go and access resources to understand the world that their kids are living in is also really critical.
If I can just maybe lean into your point, Minister, about young people feeling seen. At Kids Help Phone, as we're building these services, we're not only leveraging data, but we are co-building with young people in their communities as well. And so being able to do that, to your point, at the end of the day, it's ensuring that they're reaching out to a place that they feel is trusted and safe for them. But how we get there is through innovation and data and those insights. We hear there's so much happening with AI, and at Kids Help Phone, we're looking at AI for good. So one of the barriers is actually young people maybe not having language to talk about their feelings. In many cultures, including my own when you're growing up, you don't know how to talk about your feelings. And so being able to understand how young people are talking about it, they won't necessarily come to say, I'm feeling depressed today. They will use all of the other different words to describe how they're feeling. So if we can understand that and understand how they talk about it, not only with Kids Help Phone, but in their worlds, in social media, in gaming, that's incredibly powerful to then build solutions and access points that meet them where they are, where they feel understood and they feel seen. That's at the end of the day, that's to your point, that's how we're building trust.
Anjana, I want to give the last word to you. If you were to speak to your peers, to other young people, what would you want them to know about making the brave choice to reach out for help?
I would say something that I would have told myself 10 years ago, and that it's okay. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to I mean, we say here, like, feel out loud, and it's okay to know that maybe right now you're not feeling like you're in the best place. But there are people, there are services, there are resources that exist, just like Kids Help Phone, that are there to help you and that have helped other young people rise above the challenges that they experience. It's so much easier for me to just say that to someone, but truly it's something that you can experience, and you aren't alone. Those struggles, they may feel like a struggle that you're facing alone, but really in reality, they're struggles that are shared amongst a lot of young people, and the support is there. And that's one thing. I think resource availability, mental health literacy, the steps that we take to improve those and to make sure that young people know that, I think that's the future that I hope to kind of help contribute to and see young people flourishing in.
Thank you. Angela, Jenny, Minister Sachs, thank you all so much for having this conversation. I think it was enlightening for all of us, and it really helped us to see how on the ground every single day, Kids Help Phone and our partners with the Government of Canada, our young people partners across the country are really enabling and empowering young people to feel out loud. Let's have a round of applause for our panel. So now I'd like to turn it over to invite the Minister's office to facilitate any questions that have come up during our discussion. I'd also like to say goodbye to the folks on Instagram. We're going to be dropping off there now. So over to the Minister and her team for questions from Zoom.
We will now proceed to questions from journalists in the room. Please state your name, media outlet, and whom your question is directed to. Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions des journalistes présents dans la salle. Vous voulez indiquer votre nom, votre média, et le destinataire de votre question. Let's proceed to the first question. Nous allons passer à la première question. Okay, we will pass to the Zoom now for any further questions. Nous allons passer à Zoom maintenant pour toute autre question.
Thank you. If you're a journalist on Zoom and wish to ask a question, please use the hand raising function. Again, we'll ask that you limit yourself to one question and one follow-up, and please state to whom your question is directed. Si vous êtes journaliste sur le Zoom et vous désirez poser une question, veuillez utiliser l'option de lever la main. Encore une fois, merci de vous limiter à une question et un suivi et d'indiquer à qui vous posez votre question. Last call on Zoom. Okay, that concludes today's news conference. Any additional questions can be directed to Media Relations at Health Canada. La conférence de presse est maintenant terminée. Si vous avez d'autres questions, n'hésitez pas de communiquer avec le Bureau de relations avec les médias à Santé Canada. Merci et bonne journée. Thank you and have a nice day.
Okay.